Texas MLS podcast coming at you on Monday morning after a weekend that was eventful for MLS teams, but maybe not celebratory for two of the three. Dallas losing to Vancouver Whitecaps 2-0 at home. They had promised they wouldn't have any rust after the international break. It's a little bit rusty. We'll talk about that performance more. We'll also talk with Victor Araiza about Houston heading to Orlando, losing 2-1. Victor, some rust from the Dynamo as well?
I wouldn't call it rust, but we'll get into that.
We'll get into that, but let's start in rural Canada. Chris Bils joins
Yeah,
us.
somewhere outside Kingston. We're about somewhere between Montreal and Toronto. Seems to be a very industrial area. Are you guys familiar with En Route? Is anybody familiar with En Route? It's like the if you're driving the 401 from Toronto to Montreal, you've got all these rest stops. It's actually
Chris,
very
you know we're based
handy.
in Texas, right? You know we're based in
Yeah.
Texas.
Hey, I don't know, John. You've been all over.
That's
Concord.
true. I am a well-traveled man.
A bit of a knock on you that you don't know En Route. No, I'm just kidding. It's a nice little rest stop chain. So they've got Tim Hortons and Burger King is kind of the.
I was about to say. I think Tim Bitts and the double is probably the move, and the move for Austin FC has to be to celebrate because this game did not look like it was going to go well. Chris, let's start at Stade Saputo. You were there in Montreal to take this one in. Danny Pereira crosses the border, which is exciting news personally for him, for Austin FC. And then he decided, I don't like this that much. 2 yellow cards in the first half. He gets sent off. Austin's down to 10 men. Montreal's making some attacking changes. And you think, this could be a loss on the road. This could be trouble for Austin, chasing the Supporters Shield, chasing FC Dallas and LAFC in the Western Conference. And then they get a goal from Maxi Rudy, and they were pretty much in pen control after that. It's a great win.
It is. It's a great win, and there's a lot of things to take away from this match. You start with Danny Pereira. I mean, he's still a young player. He's 21. He's learning. It's kind of I saw somebody sort of use some profanity to describe like how they're feeling about some of his performances. It's like Danny WTF Pereira or something like that. It's just like I remember several college football players that have earned that nickname in my household. So it kind of is a reminder of where he's at in his progression. And I think he was excited to be in the country. He was excited to be playing further up the pitch. And as he kind of said to me, very honestly and frankly, post-game, he thought he was going to get away with it because it was 80 yards from goal. And, you live and you learn on that. It's really the first yellow card that does him in. And then, it was a clear yellow card. I just think he thought that, further up the pitch, kind of trying to be aggressive in the press. He thought he was going to get away with it. He didn't. He goes to the locker room. Very frustrating moment for him, I think, for the coaching staff and for the rest of the team. But, Maxi Ruti and Diego Fagundes both said it afterward. They all came together at halftime. They had a clear plan. And they knew what they wanted to do, and they came out and they did it. And credit to Maxi Ruti finishing the one chance he had in the game. He said he was a little bit frustrated that he didn't have more, especially in that first half. It was a little bit disjointed. And Owen Wolff, guys, he got moved to the 10. He played. He pulled the strings. I thought he had
big day for Wolff boys. You wrote a story on the Striker Texas about Josh Wolff and his sons and everybody in action this weekend.
Yeah, exactly. It's Tyler Wolff was with the U20s, I believe, doing some work there. And Owen Wolff coming back from his international break, stint in Spain with the U19s. Really impressive young player. And, guys, they moved Sebastian Drusi to the wing to sort of help, continue that press. And so he wouldn't get stretched out of position. Owen Wolff takes over the 10. And Alex Ring playing further back in his kind of more natural number 6 spot. I thought that everything kind of worked well. And they scrapped and they clawed and they got the win.
Yeah, I mean, it was the natural thing to do after the red card to sort of shift in that way with Drusi going to the wing, Ring filling Fuller back. I do wonder if we have some clues about where Josh Wolff wants to take Austin FC in the way that this team lined up at the start, because you mentioned Pereira playing a more farther advanced role. I saw some people asking you on Twitter and in our live blog on the Striker Texas, hey, what the heck is this formation exactly supposed to be? Is it a 4-2-3-1? Is it a 4-3-3? Is it a flat 4-4-2? I think the answer is that, sometimes we get really zeroed in on what's the formation, and it's attacking in one thing, defending in another. Maybe it looks like another thing in certain positions. To me, that's what Austin FC's formation is. But you see what Wolf is trying. Tell us more about what, pre Pereira's red card. What did the formation and the sort of the way it was working on the field say about what Josh Wolf wants to do in the second half of the season as we're approaching halfway through?
Yeah, I talked to Danny Pereira about this after the match, and if you go read my story, there's a lot in there. We're talking about him crossing the border, the red cards, but kind of buried in there as well is a fairly a fairly informative take on something that happened when Alex Ring got back from Finland and they started training again. Josh Wolf has a vision for moving Danny Pereira back to the number 8 and to move Alex Ring back to number 6. And, that's something that I think a lot of fans have been calling for. Clearly, it's something that the coaching staff did a deep dive on and looked at the numbers, looked at, the skill sets of both of these players. And, we'll see if it comes off moving forward and if they stick to their guns on that one, because obviously this one, as far as Danny Pereira goes, didn't go necessarily according to plan. I think he was excited to be further up the pitch, but he was maybe a little bit too aggressive, kind of bringing some of those things that he's learning the dark arts a little bit, but he's a little bit on the darker side than I think you'd want him to be as far as that goes. Alex Ring, though, was back to, I think, we wanted to see more from him, maybe on the attacking side. But if he's going to move back to this number 6 role, we know how good he is at that. And he looked to have an extra pep in his step, especially going down to 10 and really patrolling that midfield, making sure Montreal didn't have much going forward. And, I think if he can embrace that, I think that could be the best formula for this team, at least for now, until we see what they do in the offseason or in the summer window.
And we won't see it for a while because Danny Pereira will not be available for that rivalry match this weekend against FC Dallas. We're going to have all sorts of coverage on the Striker Texas. Chris, are you staying with us for all 30 minutes, or are you leaving after your Austin block?
I'll stay. I stay. Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, we'll talk about that later. I do want to get your sort of Montreal impressions. Maxi Arruti is this. He loves soccer. He really loves the game. We got to cover him in Dallas. Victor covered him in Houston. You covered him in Austin. He's the first Texas 3-step guy. But beyond Texas soccer, he loves Argentine soccer and European soccer. And, Montreal is one of these places where he has played. I think he does have fans there. And there's this concept in Latin American soccer, the law of the X, where when you play your former team, you score. It just happens. And then you don't celebrate. They're these sort of historic markers. I think it was an important game for Maxi personally, as well as for what Austin's doing. Tell me a little bit about what you heard from him, if you were able to speak with him, the vibe that you got from Maxi. I know you saw some of the love, and then, tell us what the atmosphere was like. I don't think a lot of people have had the chance to make the Montreal trip, although some Austin fans on the broadcast, a fair amount. They got it. So there were some individual shout outs from Adrian Healy to Seth, our friend, and to a couple other people that were in the trip, but most people were not there. What was the Montreal vibe after you tell us about Maxi?
Yeah, some of the F1 heads made this one happen, like myself and my brothers did. All 3 of the Bills boys making the trek up to Montreal. And we had a great time. It's just a really cool city. We were here. Michael and I and my mom were here 4 years ago in 2018, and sort of catching the sights. And this trip was was nice to sort of see some of those spots that we were in before and discover some new ones. And just to take everybody kind of behind the scenes, as you guys know. There's these little moments that happen when you're trying to make your way around the building, to either get in or to, traverse what is always a chaotic post-game scene, trying to get as many players as you can. And so I had 2 of those. One on the way in where, my way to the media entrance was blocked off because Austin FC was getting off the bus. So just kind of I kind of lucked into seeing Davy Arnaud signing some autographs and getting shown some love, and then talked to some of the PR folks, and they had a video for him lined up, pre-match, kind of honoring the 10-year anniversary of him scoring the first goal in Montreal.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Like at NBA, that's a big talking point. Will they have a tribute video when a player gets traded or leaves in free agency? Arnaud's been gone for a long time, but it sounds like he's still a love figure up there.
I put a quick clip of that on Twitter. You can go seek that out. And then post-match, I was talking to Diego Fagundes. We were having a nice conversation, and I see Maxi Arruti get past me. I'm like, oh, crap, I I got to try and catch Maxi before he gets on the bus. So I sort of sprint, 2 steps at a time up the stairs. And I just kind of get out there, and Maxi's signing autographs, and I just kind of luck into this scene where Maxi, is signing autographs. There's some folks speaking to him in English, and it's we miss you, Maxi. We love you. We forgive you for scoring on us tonight. And it's just like a really cool moment. And I kind of caught him in a good moment where, he actually spoke to me in English, which, I was ready to do sort of a half Spanish kind of string together.
Oh, that
And
would
he
be
was,
funny.
I'm getting a little better at that. But Maxi was kind enough to do an interview in English and just talked about how much he loves Montreal, loves the city, and also how much he's getting to love Austin. He seems like one of those guys that really settles in and is at home wherever he is. But Montreal's clearly got a special place in his heart, and even more special when he gets shown that love and is able to score, a game-winning goal, the 21st game-winning goal of Maxi Urruti's career, and he's only the 4th MLS player to score at least 5 goals for 5 different MLS clubs. Kai Kamara is also on the list. I thought he should have had maybe 2 goals in this one and just didn't come off. But just a couple cool moments there, and I've got a notebook that should be going up later today with some other thoughts from John Gallagher, Diego Fagundes, and John Gallagher had a nice assist and is showing off his left foot at left back, which might make it a little tough for John Kolmanich to get back in the lineup. So some thoughts on that.
Could be. Yeah, I thought that assist was fantastic. He had a really nice play on that goal. Really set it up and made it. Maxi finishes it, of course. A fantastic opportunity there. Let's turn our attention to FC Dallas, a disappointing performance for the North Texas boys, the Toros. They said all week, nah, we're not going to be affected by this international break. We're not going to have any rust. Yeah, sure, the other teams might have played Liga MX clubs to stay fresh, or in the case of the Colorado Rapids, sent their entire first team down to play MLS Next Pro. FC Dallas didn't seem concerned. Jesus Ferreira and Paul Arriola were in rhythm. Then an injury to Matt Hedges suffered. It's a very weird sounding injury. Nico Estevez said it's just below his knee in a place where soccer players don't typically get injured. They're not too worried about it, but they are running tests, doing an MRI, etc. I don't think FC Dallas, well, they'd probably do by this point, but, at the game, I don't think they knew how serious it was. He went through a couple tests on Saturday morning, failed, or just decided that it wasn't worth risking it. Estevez did say, hey, if this was a playoff game, if this was the last game of the season, we needed a win or something, probably would have gone. But you see immediately his absence because minute 2, bit of a breakdown at the back. Nkosi Tafari gets sucked in. Jose Martinez tries to get over, doesn't do it quickly enough. And Facundo Quignon should clear this ball, but scuffs it, and it falls right to Cavallini. Goal 2 minutes in, and all of a sudden, Vancouver can just do what they want to do, which is just stick 10 men in their own final third and just say, do something to beat us. And then FC Dallas helps them out even a little more with a free kick. Alan Velasco's in the wall for reasons that are still not entirely clear. It goes over him. He's a short man. Same, I understand, but probably shouldn't be in the wall, or at least in that position in the wall. And it's 2-0, and FC Dallas just couldn't get back. And Victor, we've been talking about, well, should these teams in Texas be trying to chase the supporter shield? For FC Dallas, 2 straight losses at home. You got to go back because, it's been an international break. It's been more than a month. 2 straight losses at home. It's a great start to the season. FC Dallas is still sitting in 4th place in the West, but that's not supporter shield level, right?
No, and I think the only thing is Dallas is probably the one team we have to worry about the least out of these 3, right? From what we've seen in the first part of the season. Maybe some tired legs at the guys up front. I mean, kind of long travel for Arriola.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting that they just got tossed back in, and Estevez didn't seem to have any qualms about that. I mean, Arriola had a very brief cameo in that US El Salvador game because he came in and got a red card within I don't remember what it was. But it was 10 minutes. So I don't think he was tired, maybe from the trips. But, Victor, I agree with you that maybe Dallas has shown to be the most consistent Texas team in the first portion. Obviously, Austin's results are better. But I think, the performances from FC Dallas have consistently shown that they understand what the system is, that they have these difference makers. But the defense has been much, much better, Victor. That's been the biggest key, man, is that the defense has been so much better. And when we talked about it, we don't really know exactly why, because the personnel is mostly the same. Yes, there's been a left back for left back switch, but Ryan Hollingshead is killing it at LAFC. He was, a beloved member of the defense in Dallas. So you think, okay, maybe that's part of it. Martin Paz has been good in goal, not, I wouldn't call him a leap and bound better than Jimmy Maurer, who is clearly an MLS starter quality goalkeeper.
Right.
To me,
But he
the difference
obviously
is
has
Matt
the
Hedges
faith of the
being
coach.
Absolutely. But to me, the biggest difference has been Matt Hedges' health. And I'm going to write about this on the Striker Texas. I wrote about it a bit in my 3 thoughts from the game. But hopefully this week we'll be able to chat about Hedges with that. As last year, he wasn't right. Last year, he had a bit of a hip issue that never really, I think, totally cleared up. This offseason, he's able to rest. The team is able to do things like sit him in this game and think that he's going to, think they're still going to get the result. That obviously didn't happen. But if Hedges' health, or even if Jose Martinez's health or Marco Farfan's health, so if something happens there, I think the defensive depth for FC Dallas could be a concern that would maybe take them from the most consistent Texas team to potentially the least consistent.
Yeah.
And a quick thought. I mean, I love this about MLS, but you start to get this point in the season, and this is one of those that's kind of head scratching to me, is that FC Dallas has had such a good start to the season, but 2 of their losses and 2 of their worst performances are randomly against the Vancouver Whitecaps. It's just like one of those that you're going to look back at the end of the season and be like, what happened there? I think part of it's scheduling, part of it's, but just some thoughts there. Is there something that Vancouver does, or is it just like they were coming off the back of a short week the first time and this time off the back of an international break?
I think it's timing, because it was a long trip that they had a couple guys missing for COVID when they first faced Vancouver, and they probably should have gotten out of that with at least a draw, if not a win. Kind of a late collapse in Vancouver last time around. And this time they come off the international break. And then that second-minute goal, I think, Vancouver's this team where they're on the road, they don't get many wins. And I think as soon as that goal goes, I say, great, we're done. If we concede once and we get a point on this, cool, mission accomplished. If we get the victory, even better. And so, FC Dallas is a team where we've seen them be dynamic in attack, but not necessarily be able to create against a team that is just sitting. They don't, well, if Alan Velasco is that player, he hasn't been able to show it yet, or maybe he hasn't been put in that spot yet. But I think that, when you talk about an individual moment of creativity, which I think is often what it can take to get past a defensive line that's just, happy to sit, happy to get men back, happy to protect the box, limit shots. I think you need that moment of individual brilliance, or you need those quick combinations, which maybe are coming along but aren't quite there yet. So I don't know that Vancouver, I mean, I guess you could say they're the boogie team. I don't know that they're doing anything that oh no, other teams are going to put the Vancouver blueprint in place. You know what I mean, Chris? Like, it just seems like they've gotten some balls that have bounced their way.
I just think it's like, and this happens every year if you really look into the nitty-gritty in the schedule, but it's like, what the Vancouver Whitecaps have, like, how many wins on the road all year, and one of them is against
Austin smoking Portland last year, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that was one where, like, all of a sudden Austin, who was not very good last year, is just like this thorn in the side of a team that almost wins MLS Cup, right? I mean, it absolutely does happen in this league, and you see, you do wonder, as much as players will say, it's just coincidence or whatever, like, is it also become mental? Are you saying, like, we don't want to see the freaking Whitecaps in the playoffs, even though we should beat them? They keep smoking it. Like, they keep getting our number. Like, it definitely could be a mental thing, Victor.
Yeah, but I think the international stuff does play into it a little bit. I think you had a couple guys out, especially all over the world. The U.S. guys. It was 4 games. It wasn't a normal window.
It's a heavy break.
You got a guy over in Hungary. You got a guy over in Africa. I think all these things play in. We'll see how much of it is rust, really. I think over the next couple of games. I don't want to say the next game because the Austin game is obviously a derby, and that's a little bit more.
I think it's a massive game. It's a massive game. FC Dallas has to, they did. I would say they didn't really answer the bell, quote unquote, to use a boxing metaphor, against Vancouver. They concede 2 minutes in. They have a pretty rough first half. Paxton Pomykal said, all 11 of us played like crap in the first half. So, I mean, they're not mincing words or saying, it was a good performance. And absolutely. I think that the thing is, there is belief in this FC Dallas team that they could go on the road and get a victory. Last year, that was not necessarily the case. After a home loss, you said, well, they're going to lose on the road, and then it's going to become this spiral. But for FC Dallas, they do look now at going to Austin FC, a team that they need to leap in the standings, and then they go to LAFC, the team that's top of the Western Conference. So the response, the loss, it's not great, but if the response to the loss is 4 points or 6 points from the road, hey, no problem. It's easy street. FC Dallas is who we thought they were before this international break. If you start to lose more games and follow loss with loss, or loss with 2 losses, then I think it'd start to be panic time. Not panic time in Houston, despite the fact that the Dynamo fall 2-1 to Orlando in a weird game. Erkan Kara with 2 goals. Sebastian Ferreira once again on the board for the Dynamo right after they go down 2-0. Chris, you're going to have to mute from en route. We're getting a lot of en route. As we talked to Victor about the Dynamo, let's focus in specifically on Houston. I say it's not a crisis because we know that Hector Herrera is coming. We know that the midfield, which I thought Ethan Bartlow, especially on that first goal, probably could have done a little better. We know the midfield is getting help, Victor, but you mentioned, hey, if you fall in too big of a hole, Ache might not be able to rescue you. Where does this game sit for the Dynamo in sort of concern ranking?
Yeah, look, I think it's such a it's like it's so back and forth with this team, right? I mean, some weeks they look good, some weeks they don't. I think the big hope is that Herrera will provide stability once he gets here. It's 3 games now to his arrival. I don't know how much of a seamless transition it will be coming back from vacation, but we'll see, right? The biggest thing is there's still tendencies, right? Like starting slow, kind of giving up the first goal, making a late surge in the second half, and it all kind of looks like, oh well, there's signs here, right? Where if they just started playing like this, I mean, it'd be a completely different game, and there would have been points taken away. I think part of experimentation, right? I mean, Ethan Bartlow in midfield, something they tried over the international break, something they wanted to bring in on this occasion. But I just think the approach to it, especially in the first half, is what everybody's kind of pointing to. You have an Orlando that was playing midweek, a Pedro Gallese that was playing in Qatar on Monday, right? Joins midweek in Boston, and then kind of plays this game, and you don't test them maybe furthermore. You don't try to push forward. You're much more fresh your team, and I think those were maybe the keys coming into this game for Houston that they didn't exploit against an Orlando team, right? The lineup as well. Just, I mean, there's obviously uncertainty over Fafa Pico and why he hasn't been playing, but I think to you start with Corey Baird and Beto Avila on the wings, 2 guys that have served different functions for you, but I don't know if either of them is necessarily a starter. And all these things play into that first half. Obviously, saving Nagamura said he was saving Darwin Quintero for the second half. Quintero comes in, completely changes the complexion of the game. They start pushing forward. Ferreira gets a goal after struggling to get service inside the box in the first half. Another pending issue, right? And these are all things that play in, but ultimately, I think, the Dynamo will be disappointed to not come out of this one with at least a point. The way the game turned out, it's funny, right? Like Kara gets the credit for the 2 goals, but the second one really is a one from Pereira where it just deflects off of him, and I mean, that one to me, I'm looking at these headlines and it's like, oh, Kara, 2 goals,
2 goals, 2 goals.
Like, well, but that's why you got to get your news from the striker, because we'll tell you how it is.
Yeah, we'll tell you how it is. And how it is that the Dynamo are, we talked about, will they slip into too big of a hole? I'm sorry, I'm laughing. Chris Bill's face is a little frozen. That's why I'm laughing. Podcast listener. He's a handsome man, but right now there we go. He's coming back a little bit. He's coming back. The situation as it is right now is that the Dynamo are not out of this. We talked about being in this hole that was too big for even Herrera to dig out of. They're sitting on 18 points, and the playoff line right now is 20, right? I think they have
right.
Maybe 1 game more played. I mean, it's a little complicated, but everyone is right there in the West, right? The Sounders have the fewest games played because of the CONCACAF Champions League. They've got 20 points. They're the last team in the playoff right
and
there.
And they jumped Houston
Vancouver's
over the
on 20.
break.
Right. Well, yeah, and they're going to have an opportunity to maybe, well, I guess they can't jump with the other Texas teams, but, they're going to keep jumping teams until they have those games in hand, out of hand. But the point is, the Dynamo sit on 18 points. They're in 10th. There's still 2 teams between them and the playoff line. But you string together a couple wins with Hector Herrera or with anybody, and you're right back in this. All 3 Texas teams, Victor, are 100% in the race for the playoffs as we approach the 45% mark of the season. We didn't necessarily think that was going to be the case, and we were worried that the Dynamo were going to be in such a big hole that Herrera and company couldn't pull them out if they do go on a summer surge. It's all right there for the Dynamo. The opportunity knocks.
Yeah, and I think the good thing is that they have a home game this week against Chicago, who's last in the East. That should be a winnable game.
I did see
midweek
you
trip back.
slandering Chicago. They're not as bad as they look, man. Let me tell you, they're not as bad as they look.
No, but Houston's at
You should
home, right?
win.
I mean, the
You should
expectation,
win.
and here's my thing. I think my biggest problem with all of this is at the beginning of the year, we're all hearing about this new energy, right? New GM, new owner, new coach, and how the expectations need to be much higher in Houston. That this is a team that is going to live up to the expectations with the fourth largest city in the United States. That performance in Orlando wasn't living up to the fourth largest city in the United States. That was a small market team, right? And that's the thing. If you're going to be at home against Chicago, regardless, I mean, they're not one of the best teams in the East. Is my point, right?
No,
that should be a winnable game at home. The game against Charlotte, in over the next couple games also at home before Herrera gets here, that should be another winnable game. The one game you should probably lose or should be expected to lose is that midweek trip to Portland. So just looking at this picture, I mean, this shouldn't be a team that should be completely struggling. Maybe we can call it the middle of the season and they're still experimenting, and you can maybe point to some of those things. I think that's all part of it. Fafa Pico, that situation, I think it's a little bit confusing, and then one where people would just expect a little bit. And because again, this is a team that has said themselves they want to be more transparent, expect more transparency, and just kind of not be told he wasn't taken because he wasn't in the 20 men, best possible 20 men to go out and win this game when you needed goals. That's probably a guy that could have helped you get some. Corey Barrett has 0 goals with the Houston Dynamo during his tenure, right? 0 MLS goals. Let me clarify that. He has 1 Open Cup goal. Beto Avila is obviously in his rookie season. I think he's probably a player that you can think more off the bench. But I think those are little things, and these are the things that Nagamura is going to encounter in his first year as a MLS head coach, right? I gave him credit earlier in the year where he didn't falter, where maybe Tab Ramos did, and trying to manage the locker room with Darwin Quintero. But now there's this situation. We'll see how the club helps him, and GM Pat Onstad as well, because I do think that was one of the issues last year. The general manager helping to manage the roster as well. So we'll see how they hit these roadblocks. And again, when you bring in a guy like Hector Herrera, you expect him to have higher expectations. Is he going to be all happy as well? How are you going to manage him when results don't go your way? This is all part of the drama we're gonna encounter this year, I think. But it makes it interesting.
It does. Reason for celebration despite the defeat in Houston, as the Houston bid was announced as one of 2 cities in Texas that will be hosting World Cup games. The other is up here in North Texas, where I think the confidence is pretty high. Victor, we weren't necessarily sure exactly what the plan was for the Houston bid. Dallas had this celebratory event planned Thursday. Once it got announced, people were cheering and at the AT&T Discovery District downtown. Heard from the leaders in a press conference shortly after, and they're now in New York City lobbying to try and get the final in Dallas-Fort Worth, and Arlington. I wrote a column about that on the Striker Texas about what the leaders need to do, what they need to emphasize, and how important it could be to try and bring these critical games to Dallas. But Houston, while they also want important games like a quarterfinal or semifinal, they're also just happy to be on the list, it seems like. What was the event and what was the celebration like?
Yeah, look, I think that's probably in the end it doesn't matter, right? Because Houston got the games in a couple of years here. We're going to have the World Cup.
All comes out in the wash.
Yeah. But I think the build up to this, the celebration, I think that's the one thing that I do wish we would have gotten to see more of a celebration, right? Of soccer fans here in Houston, an event by the city, not so closed off, right? And I get it, maybe they were just nervous that they weren't going to get it. But the next day, it's kind of like, hey, let's all hang out at Brian Chink's bar, which is not a bad place to hang out. But I just think, it just giving this back more to the community over the next couple of years. I think it should be a little bit more the focus. Of course, we'll have some of those columns. I'll have some of those columns up on the strikertexas.com. But for now, obviously, all celebration. The games are here. I think there was a bit of a worry just because there was so much uncertainty. There was not much coming out, and especially the planning around the announcement.
And between Dallas and Monterrey, which we knew Monterrey was going to be one of the cities. We assumed Dallas was going to be one of them, and Houston's kind of right there. And is it a bonus that they're so close? Is it a negative that they're so close? It's always hard to sort of divine FIFA's thinking. That's an understatement, actually. But it's always hard to figure out what FIFA's thinking, what this global
Right.
body is going to do. Ultimately, we end up with 2 World Cup cities for the Men's World Cup in Texas. Chris Austin's going to try and shoehorn in as well as a training center. That'll be interesting. I want to hear a little bit about that. But then I also want to hear about the best thing you ate this weekend. Is it bagel? Is it smoked meat? Is it poutine? Let's hear it.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that Austin will have at least one team park itself here. I mean, you see how much the U.S. men's national team and the U.S. women's national team have enjoyed that training facility, just being in Austin. Being able to get out on the water, whatever you want to do. I think it's a good spot for national teams to look at. We'll see. I had somebody ask me if there's a limit to how many teams could be here. I think it's more of a capacity issue. I don't think there's no rules around that. So we'll see what that looks like with 48 teams spread across the country and two
across the continent.
two host sites in Texas. I think it makes sense as a place where some teams. I don't know if you know this, John, but I think the Bulgarian national team parked itself in Austin for a brief stint before the 1994 World Cup, and obviously that worked out well for them. So maybe Risto Stoichkov can provide some suggestions if any teams are looking to park themselves in Austin.
I think Austin's probably changed a little bit since 1994. That's what I hear.
He's like handing out suggestions for like coffee shops or they were there in 1994.
It's been closed for 20 years.
Yeah, I love that. But anyway, as far as Montreal, I'll skip the food, the bagels, the smoked meat, the poutine. It's all good, but a big reason for the trip was my brother's a huge F1 head, and we got out to the race yesterday afternoon, and that was just a great experience, especially after it had been raining on Friday and Saturday. Sun came out, beautiful day, just thousands and thousands of people out, catching the race, and just a way different than the Austin experience, just because it's so green, so much shade, so much, it's a park throughout the normal part of the year, and they kind of like pile all this infrastructure in, and so it was just a really neat experience, and I highly recommend to anybody who's a big F1 head like my brother, and it certainly is, and I can claim to be a little bit as well, maybe even more after this weekend. So.
Bad day for my boy Checo Perez. Bad day.
I know Michael's a big Checo guy too, and we got to hear.
He'll bounce back.
We couldn't see actually where he pulled off right next to the corner where we were standing, and there was a big chant, Checo, Checo, and Michael was like, we were like all excited, and then we're like, oh, that's not a good chant.
That's a sad Checo right there.
Yeah.
But a lot of fun and interesting connection there between Austin and Montreal. Glad you got to check that out. Hope your travels are safe. Hope you check into some more en routes as you continue down whatever road you're rolling down in Canada. Safe travels to Chris Bils. Thanks for joining. Victor Araiza down in Houston. We'll let you get back to work on that World Cup bids coverage. And I will get back to work on FC Dallas versus Austin FC this weekend. It's a derby. We'll have all the coverage on the Striker Texas. Hope you check it out. Hope you subscribe. Hope you enjoy. The only reason we can do what we do is because you guys subscribe, support, and check it out. We'll talk to you guys next week, breaking down that game, but we'll also be keeping it fresh on the site every single day on the Striker Texas. Hope you check that out. We'll talk to you guys then. Take care.